At our family barbecue, they told me to move to the back table because the younger generation should stay near the guests. I sat quietly. Later that night, I signed a document that shifted the entire family's influence right back into my hands. But let me back up. The thing about being underestimated is that it gives you time. Time to watch. Time to listen. Time to understand exactly how deep the rot goes before you cut it out. My name is Daniel Thorne. I'm 58 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had built something worth passing down. A construction business that survived 2 recessions, a modest real estate portfolio, a reputation in our suburb that meant something when I walked into the hardware store or the bank. My wife Laura and I raised 2 kids in a 4-bedroom colonial with a yard big enough for the kind of summer barbecues that used to mean something. Used to. The barbecue was Laura's idea, though I could see the tension in her shoulders when she suggested it. "The kids want to do something for Memorial Day weekend," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Invite some of their friends, maybe some of our old neighbors." Our old neighbors. Like we'd already been shuffled off to some retirement community in Florida instead of living in the same house for 32 years. But I said yes, because that's what you do. You say yes to your kids even when they've started treating you like a piece of furniture that doesn't quite match the rest of the room anymore. The morning of the barbecue, I was up at 6, same as always. The grass needed cutting. The fence near the back gate had a loose board. The propane tank on the grill was running low, so I drove to the hardware store and swapped it out, came back, pressure washed the deck, and set up the folding tables Laura had bought specifically for this occasion. White plastic, the kind you rent for weddings. By 10 o'clock, I'd worked up a sweat. Laura brought me iced tea on the deck and sat down next to me, her hand finding mine. She didn't say anything, but I felt the weight of whatever she wasn't saying. "What is it?" I asked. "Just be patient today." Her voice was quiet, careful. I know they can be thoughtless sometimes. Thoughtless. That was the word she chose. I squeezed her hand. "I'm always patient." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Laura's beautiful in that way that doesn't photograph well, but hits you in person. 56 years old and still the same woman I married, except sharper now, more watchful. She'd been watching a lot lately. The guests started arriving around noon. My son Trevor showed up first, driving a leased BMW he couldn't actually afford, but insisted on keeping because image matters in commercial real estate. He's 34, barrel-chested like me, but softer around the middle, with the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no often enough. His wife Madison climbed out of the passenger seat in designer sunglasses and shoes that cost more than our monthly water bill. She's pretty in that high-maintenance way, all highlights and yoga-toned arms and a smile that never quite softens her eyes. "Dad!" Trevor's handshake was too firm, too brief, the kind of handshake that says I'm busy and important and doing you a favor by being here. "Place looks great. You been working on it all morning?" "Just tidying up." "Well, it shows." He clapped me on the shoulder and walked past me toward the house, Madison trailing behind with a little finger wave that might have been meant for me or might have been checking her manicure. My daughter Vanessa arrived 20 minutes later with her husband Kyle. Vanessa inherited Laura's looks, but not her warmth. She's 31, works in marketing, and has the kind of polished presentation that makes you feel like you're being sold something, even when she's asking how you've been. Kyle's a financial analyst, or he says he is. I've met plenty of financial analysts, and they don't usually drive cars they can't afford or wear watches that cost 6 months of mortgage payments. "Daddy!" Vanessa hugged me, and I caught the scent of expensive perfume. "Thanks for hosting. We're so excited about today." "Of course, sweetheart." We invited a few people from work. Hope that's okay. She was already moving past me, her phone out, typing something. "Just some contacts. Good people to know." Good people to know. In my day, we called them friends. More guests filtered in over the next hour. Some I recognized, neighbors from down the street, a couple of guys I used to work with before I semi-retired and let Trevor take over more of the day-to-day operations. But most were strangers. Young professionals with firm handshakes and practiced small talk, the kind of people who networked at barbecues and called it socializing. I worked the grill. It's what I always did at these things. Burgers, hot dogs, chicken breasts marinated the way Laura taught me 30 years ago. The smell of charcoal and meat made me nostalgic for simpler gatherings, back when the kids were little and the biggest drama was whether someone got ketchup on their shirt. Trevor appeared at my elbow around 2 o'clock, beer in hand. "Hey, Dad, we're going to shuffle the seating a bit. Move you and Mom to that table in the back." He gestured vaguely toward the far end of the yard, near the fence. "The younger generation should stay near the main guest area, you know? Better for conversation flow." I looked at him, really looked at him. Saw the way he wouldn't quite meet my eyes, the slight flush in his cheeks that said he knew exactly what he was asking, and was embarrassed, but not embarrassed enough to take it back. "The back table," I repeated. "Yeah, it just makes sense, right? More room for everyone to mingle." Madison appeared beside him, all teeth and sunglasses. "It's really for the best, Dan. This way you and Laura can relax without all the noise." Dan, not Daniel, not even Dad, which I'd never asked her to call me but would have appreciated. Dan, like we were co-workers she barely knew. I turned back to the grill, flipped a burger. "Sure. Great." Trevor's relief was palpable. He squeezed my shoulder again and walked away, Madison already laughing at something he was saying, the two of them moving back toward the center of the party like I'd just approved a minor menu change instead of being shuffled off to the metaphorical kids' table. Laura found me 10 minutes later. She didn't say anything, just touched my arm and looked at me with those sharp, watchful eyes. "It's fine," I said. "It's not fine. We'll eat at the back table. It's not the end of the world." But we both knew it wasn't about the table. I finished grilling and loaded up 2 plates. Laura and I walked to the back table, past clusters of guests who barely glanced our way, past Trevor holding court near the deck with a group of clean-cut young professionals, past Vanessa laughing too loud at something Kyle said. We sat. The table wobbled on the uneven ground. From here, we had a perfect view of the party, but were clearly outside it. Separate. Decorative. "They planned this," Laura said quietly. "I know. Trevor told me last week they wanted to make a good impression on some new business contacts." She picked at her potato salad. "He said it would be easier if we didn't dominate the conversation like we usually do." "We don't dominate conversation. I know that. You know that." She set down her fork. "Daniel, something's wrong. This isn't just about today." I'd been thinking the same thing for weeks. Small things, mostly. Trevor stopping by the office less. Vanessa canceling lunch plans. Both of them using phrases like moving forward and new direction and fresh perspective without actually saying what they meant. And then there were the financial statements I'd noticed last month. Nothing dramatic. Just small discrepancies. Accounts shifted. Expenses I didn't recognize. When I'd asked Trevor about it, he'd smiled that confident smile and said he was streamlining operations. Streamlining. "After the party," I said. "We'll talk about it after the party." Laura nodded, but I saw the worry lines around her eyes deepen. We ate in silence, watching our children perform for an audience that would forget them the moment they left. And I realized something I'd been avoiding for months. They were embarrassed by us. By me specifically. The old man who still wore work boots and drove a 10-year-old pickup. The guy who built things with his hands instead of pushing paper around an office. I'd become inconvenient. Around 4 o'clock, the party started winding down. Guests filtered out with polite goodbyes, most of them directed at Trevor and Vanessa. A few people waved vaguely in our direction, but no one came over to thank us for hosting. Because it wasn't our party. It was theirs. We were just the venue. I helped Laura clean up while Trevor and Madison, Vanessa, and Kyle sat on the deck, drinking wine and laughing about something I couldn't hear. When I carried a box of empty bottles past them, Trevor called out, "Thanks for today, Dad. Really appreciate you letting us do this." Letting them. In my house, on my property, with my money paying for most of the food. "Anytime," I said. That night, after everyone left and Laura went upstairs to shower, I sat in my office with a glass of whiskey and a file folder I'd been avoiding for 3 weeks. My attorney, Joe Patterson, had drawn up the papers after I'd asked him to review some irregularities in the business accounts. "Just a precaution," I'd told him. "I trust my kids, but I want to understand what's happening." Joe had understood. He was my age, built his own firm from nothing, knew what it meant to watch your life's work potentially slip through your fingers. The documents in the folder were dense, legal language that took me an hour to fully parse, even though Joe had explained them twice. But the core was simple. A reversal clause built into the original business structure I'd created 30 years ago. A safety valve I'd installed and then forgotten about. Something that gave me unilateral authority to reclaim full operational control under specific circumstances. Circumstances like financial irregularities, like unauthorized restructuring, like the quiet exclusion of a founding partner from decision-making processes. All I had to do was sign. I pulled out my pen, sat there for 5 minutes staring at the signature line. Trevor was my son. Vanessa was my daughter. I'd raised them, paid for their education, taught them everything I knew about building something that lasted. But they'd told me to move to the back table. I signed the document, then I scanned it, emailed it to Joe with a note. "Make it effective immediately. Don't tell anyone until I say." His response came back in under a minute. "Done. Call me when you're ready to move." I finished my whiskey, closed the folder, and sat in the dark for a long time. Laura found me there an hour later. She didn't turn on the light, just sat down in the chair across from me. "Did you do it?" she asked. "Yes." "Good." Her voice was hard, harder than I'd heard in years. "They've been planning to cut you out, Daniel. I found emails on Vanessa's laptop last week when I was helping her with something. They're talking to lawyers about transitioning leadership and protecting the family legacy by removing what they called outdated management." My jaw tightened. "They said that?" "Trevor wrote it." Vanessa agreed. "They're planning to present you with a buyout offer next month. A tiny fraction of what it's worth, but structured to make you look unreasonable if you refuse." "How long have you known?" 2 weeks. I wanted to be sure before I told you." She leaned forward. "They think we're stupid, Daniel. They think we won't fight back." I looked at my wife. Really looked at her. Saw the anger beneath the calm, the cold calculation in her eyes that matched what I was feeling. "We're not going to fight back," I said. Her expression flickered with confusion. "We're going to destroy them." Understanding dawned. She smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. "Tell me what you need," she said. And I did. While you're here, hit the hype button. Don't forget to subscribe and support this channel with a like. And tell us below, have you ever faced something like this? The morning after the barbecue, I woke up at 5:30 like always, but this time I didn't go for my usual run. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table with coffee and started making lists. Not grocery lists or weekend project lists. These were different. The first list was assets. Everything I owned, everything I'd built, every piece of property and equipment and investment account that had my name on it. Some of it was jointly held with the business, some was personal, but all of it needed to be accounted for and understood. The second list was leverage. Every weakness I'd noticed in Trevor's operations over the past 2 years. Every questionable decision, every corner cut, every time he'd prioritized image over substance. Not illegal things, just stupid things, risky things, the kind of choices that look brilliant until they don't. The third list was people. Who knew what? Who owed me favors? Who would talk if I asked the right questions? Laura came down at 6:15, already dressed. She set her own coffee cup on the table and looked at my lists without saying anything for a full minute. "You're really doing this," she said finally. "Yes. No going back?" "They already made that decision for us." She nodded slowly. "Then we do it right. Completely. No half measures." "No half measures," I agreed. She pulled out her phone and started her own list. I'd forgotten how formidable Laura could be when she decided to stop being nice. She'd managed the business finances for years before Trevor took over, knew every account, every relationship, every piece of the machine I'd built. "First thing," she said, typing quickly, "we need to know exactly what they've been doing. I have access to the family trust documents, but there are business accounts I can't see anymore. Can Joe subpoena those? If I have cause, but that tips our hand. What about Marcus?" She glanced up. "He still does the quarterly audits, right?" Marcus Blake had been our accountant for 15 years. Good man, thorough, the kind of professional who asked uncomfortable questions when numbers didn't add up. "Trevor might have switched accountants," I said. "Call him anyway. If they did switch, that tells us something." Smart. I added Marcus's name to my people list. We spent the next hour cross-referencing information, building a timeline of when things started to shift. It was subtle at first. About 18 months ago, Trevor began scheduling management meetings without inviting me. He called them operational updates and said they were too boring to waste my time on. I'd been flattered, thought it meant he was finally ready to run things himself. 6 months later, the financial reports started coming less frequently. Then they changed format, became simplified summaries instead of detailed breakdowns. "Easier to read," Trevor had said, "more executive level." 3 months ago, I'd noticed my name was no longer on the signature cards for 2 of the business accounts. When I asked about it, Trevor had explained it was just administrative cleanup to streamline banking operations. Streamlining again. That word kept coming up. "They've been doing this systematically," Laura said, staring at her notes. "This isn't impulsive. They planned it." "Madison's influence," I said. "She's got Trevor convinced he's building an empire instead of running a mid-sized construction company. And Kyle's pushing Vanessa the same way. He keeps talking about maximizing family resources and strategic positioning. I heard him at Christmas telling his parents we were restructuring for growth." I drank my coffee, thinking. Trevor and Vanessa had always been competitive, but they'd also been team players. Something had changed. Or maybe it hadn't. Maybe this was who they'd always been, and I'd just been too proud of them to see it. "We need to understand what they're actually planning," I said. "Not just the business stuff, the whole picture." Vanessa mentioned something last month about a family strategy session. She said it was just about coordinating schedules, but Laura trailed off. "But?" She asked if we were going to be traveling anytime soon, specifically in July. When I said we didn't have plans, she looked disappointed. "They want us out of town, or they want a clear runway to do something without us around." I pulled out my phone and called Joe Patterson. He answered on the second ring, sounding fully awake despite the early hour. "Daniel, I was expecting your call. The documents I signed last night. Walk me through what happens next." "Right now, nothing visible. The clause reinstates your full authority over business operations, but it doesn't trigger automatically. You have to activate it by formally notifying the other shareholders, which in this case are Trevor and Vanessa." "What happens when I notify them?" "All operational decisions made in the last 6 months become subject to your review and approval. Any contract signed without your knowledge can be voided. Any financial restructuring can be reversed. Essentially, you become the sole decision-maker until you choose to delegate authority again." "Can they fight it?" "They can try, but the language is airtight. I wrote it myself when you first incorporated, and it's never been amended. They'd need to prove gross incompetence or incapacity on your part, and good luck with that." "What about their shares?" "Their ownership percentages don't change. They still hold 30% each. But ownership and control are different things. You own 40% and control 100% of operations. How long until they can challenge this? They can file motions immediately, but realistically, 6 months minimum before any court would hear it. And that's assuming they have grounds, which they don't. I thanked Joe and hung up. Laura was watching me with those sharp eyes. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I want to know what they're planning before I pull the trigger. Then we need someone on the inside. Who? She smiled. Donna. Donna Freeman had been Trevor's administrative assistant for 3 years. Mid-40s, competent, underpaid, and notably absent from the barbecue yesterday, despite being invited to every company event historically. He fired her, Laura said, reading my expression. 2 weeks ago, called it a role elimination. She's got a severance package that requires an NDA, but she's angry. Very. I thought about that. Donna had always been professional, friendly, the kind of person who remembered birthdays and kept the office running smoothly. Trevor letting her go was either cruel or strategic, and knowing my son lately, probably both. Can you reach out? I asked. Already planning to. Coffee this morning. Laura, she raised an eyebrow. What? Thank you. For this. I gestured at the lists, the early morning planning session, the cold tactical thinking. For being on my side. Daniel. Her voice softened slightly. They told you to move to the back table. They told you to sit down and be quiet in your own house. The softness disappeared. I've been on your side for 34 years. This doesn't change that. It just changes what we're willing to tolerate. She stood, kissed me on the forehead, and grabbed her car keys. I'll be back in 2 hours. Don't do anything dramatic while I'm gone. No promises. After she left, I sat alone in the kitchen and thought about what came next. The smart play was to wait, gather information, understand the full scope of what Trevor and Vanessa were planning before making a move. But part of me wanted to burn it all down immediately. Wanted to walk into Trevor's office and watch his face when I told him everything he'd been building belonged to me again. I resisted that urge. Barely. Instead, I called Marcus Blake. He answered on the 4th ring, sounding like he'd been up for hours. Daniel, good to hear from you. How's retirement treating you? Semi-retirement, I corrected. And that's actually what I'm calling about. I need to know if you're still doing the quarterly audits for Thorne Construction. Pause. A long one. I'm not, he said finally. Trevor switched firms about 6 months ago. Said he wanted someone who specialized in commercial real estate accounting. Did he say why? Just that it was time for a change. Professional, nothing personal. Another pause. But between you and me, I got the impression he didn't like my questions. What questions? About cash flow discrepancies, about expense accounts that seemed high relative to revenue, about a couple of property transactions that looked aggressive. My hand tightened on the phone. Aggressive how? Leveraged purchases with very little down, high-risk loans structured as business expenses, the kind of moves that work brilliantly in a growing market but become anchors the moment things slow down. Is the market slowing down? In our area? Starting to. Interest rates are climbing, construction costs are up, permits are taking longer. Nothing catastrophic yet, but the easy money days are over. He hesitated. Daniel, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but I'm worried about Trevor. He's making the same mistakes I've seen a dozen young developers make, betting everything on continued growth instead of building sustainable operations. Can you send me your last audit report? I can't. Attorney-client privilege, even though I'm not his attorney. But he trailed off. If someone were to request those documents through official channels, I'd have to provide them. Official channels meaning? A board request, or a shareholder inquiry, or an IRS audit, though I'm not suggesting anyone call the IRS. Understood. Daniel, be careful. I don't know what's happening, but something's off. I thanked him and hung up. adding his information to my notes. By the time Laura returned 2 hours later, I had a more complete picture. Not perfect, but enough to know this was bigger than I'd thought. She came through the door looking grim. "Donna talked," she said without preamble. "Trevor's planning a full restructure. He's been negotiating a merger with a larger development firm out of Boston. They'd buy out Thorne Construction, keep Trevor on as regional director, and pay him a significant salary plus equity. What about our shares? Bought out at what Donna called an insulting valuation. She saw the preliminary numbers. We'd get maybe 20 cents on the dollar compared to what the business is actually worth." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "When?" "They wanted to present it to you in July. Make it seem like a great opportunity to finally retire and enjoy your golden years while Trevor takes things to the next level." "And if I said no?" "Donna said Madison told her they had a backup plan. Something about proving you were no longer competent to run the business. Medical documentation, testimony from business associates, the works. They were going to have me declared incompetent. Madison's father is a psychiatrist. Apparently, he owes her some favors." I stood up, walked to the window, stared out at the backyard where yesterday's party had left faint impressions in the grass. "They really thought this would work," I said quietly. "They thought you'd roll over, that you were too old, too tired, too checked out to fight back." I turned to look at my wife. "They were wrong. Very wrong," she agreed. "So what do we do?" I picked up my phone and called Joe Patterson again. "I need you to file a formal shareholder inquiry," I said when he answered. "Full financial review, all accounts, all transactions from the past 18 months. I want everything. That's going to alert them that you know something's up." "Good. Let them panic. Let them scramble. I want them off balance when I make my next move." "Which is?" "I'm going to Trevor's office, today, and I'm going to retrieve some documents." "Daniel, don't do anything." "I'm not going to hurt anyone, Joe. I'm just going to remind my son that I still know how to fight." I hung up before he could argue. Laura was smiling. That dangerous smile again. "I'm coming with you," she said. "Laura, don't even try to talk me out of it. I want to see his face." I looked at my wife and realized all over again why I'd married her. "Let's go," I said. The weekend after the board meeting was quiet. Too quiet. No calls from Trevor or Vanessa, no angry texts from Madison, no passive-aggressive messages from Kyle. Just silence. Laura and I spent Saturday reviewing business operations, making calls to key employees, ensuring everyone understood there'd been a leadership transition. Most people were relieved. Some were confused. Nobody was particularly surprised. Trevor had been pissing people off for months, our operations manager Rick told me. Always promising things he couldn't deliver, making decisions without consulting anyone who actually did the work. People were starting to talk about jumping ship. Well, the ship's back under my command now. Good. Maybe we can get back to actually building things instead of just talking about growth strategies. Sunday I drove past Trevor's house. His BMW was in the driveway. Lights were on inside. Life continuing as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. Everything had happened. Laura caught me staring at my phone that evening. "Waiting for them to call?" she asked. "Maybe. They're not going to, not yet. They're still processing. Processing that they lost. Processing that they were wrong. That's harder." Monday morning, I went to the office. My office. The one I'd left 18 months ago when I'd stupidly thought Trevor was ready to take over. It was different now, sleeker, more modern, with that open concept feel that Madison probably insisted on. My old desk was gone, replaced by a glass monstrosity that looked expensive and uncomfortable. I had maintenance bring back my old desk from storage. Rick stopped by around 10. "Boss, we've got a situation." "What kind?" "Trevor showed up this morning, started trying to give orders to the crew on the Riverside project. When they called me for clarification, he lost his shit. Started yelling about how he was still their supervisor, still in charge, and they needed to respect his authority. Where is he now? Left about an hour ago, but he's pissed. Let me guess. He doesn't understand what no operational authority means. He understands. He just doesn't accept it. I pulled out my phone and texted Trevor. Office, tomorrow, 9 a.m. Be there or I file trespassing charges. His response came back immediately. It's my office too. Not anymore. 9 a.m. No response after that. That evening, Vanessa called. Not me. Laura. I only heard one side of the conversation, but it was enough. No, I'm not going to convince him to reconsider. Because he's right, Vanessa. No, you don't get to play the victim here. You knew what Trevor was doing and you went along with it. I don't care if you didn't know about the mental incompetence plan. You knew about the merger, and you knew it was wrong. Laura's voice got harder. Your father built this family's wealth. You don't get to disrespect that and then cry when there are consequences. No, I'm not being unreasonable. Goodbye, Vanessa. She hung up. She wanted me to convince you to give Trevor his authority back, Laura said. Said the family was being torn apart. What did you say? That it was already torn apart. We're just acknowledging it now. How did she respond? She hung up on me, then called back to apologize, then started crying, then hung up again. I felt something twist in my chest. Guilt, maybe, or regret, or just the pain of watching something die that you'd worked so hard to build. We're doing the right thing, I said, trying to convince myself. I know. They forced this. I know. So why do I feel like shit? Laura came over, wrapped her arms around me. Because they're still your kids, and no matter how badly they've behaved, you still love them. That doesn't make you weak, Daniel. It makes you human. I held her and tried to believe it. Tuesday morning, Trevor showed up at 9 on the dot. He looked like he hadn't slept. Hair uncombed, shirt wrinkled, carrying himself with the kind of brittle tension that comes from barely suppressed rage. Dad, he said when he walked into my office. Sit. He sat. I slid a document across the desk. This is your new employment contract. You're being moved to project supervisor, reporting directly to Rick. Your salary is $75,000 a year. Your company car is being repossessed. Your expense account is frozen pending audit results. He stared at the document. You're demoting me. I'm putting you in a position that matches your current skill level and your recent performance. I ran this company. You ran it into the ground. You made risky decisions, violated partnership agreements, and tried to sell it out from under me. Those aren't the actions of someone who deserves executive authority. I was trying to grow. You were trying to get rich quick. There's a difference. His jaw tightened. So that's it? I'm just a regular employee now? You're lucky you're an employee at all. You still own 30% of the company. That ownership gives you dividend rights, but it doesn't give you operational control, not anymore. This is humiliating. Yes, it is. That's the point. He stood abruptly. I won't do it. I won't sign this. Then you don't work here. But you still own 30% of a business you can't sell and can't control. Your choice. You're punishing me. I'm holding you accountable. There's a difference. He walked to the door, stopped. You know what? Fine. Demote me. Cut my pay, take everything. But don't pretend this is about business principles. This is about ego. About you not being able to handle being pushed aside. Is that what you think? That's what I know. I stood, walked around the desk. You told me to move to the back table, Trevor. You literally told me to get out of the way so the younger generation could impress your friends. You made me irrelevant at my own party, and then you planned to make me irrelevant in my own business. You want to talk about ego? Look in a mirror. I was trying to be respectful. You were trying to be rid of me. And when I didn't cooperate, you planned to have me declared mentally incompetent. Don't stand there and lecture me about ego when you were willing to destroy my reputation to get what you wanted. His face flushed. That was Madison's idea. But you didn't reject it. You reviewed it, you discussed it. You kept it as a backup plan. That means you own it. The vandalism was amateur. Red spray paint, hasty letters, the kind of thing you do at 3 a.m. when you're angry and drunk. I called the police, filed a report, and had the truck repainted by noon. But the message was clear. This wasn't over. Rick called me later that day with more problems. Boss, 3 of Trevor's hires didn't show up for work this morning. When I called them, they said Trevor told them to quit. Said he'd hire them back when he took control again. He's sabotaging operations. Yep. And there's more. Someone accessed the client database yesterday evening and exported a bunch of contact information. I'm guessing Trevor's planning to poach clients. Can we prove it was him? The login credentials were his, but he'll probably claim someone else used them. I thought about that. Trevor burning bridges behind him. Trevor lashing out. Trevor still believing he could win this fight. Change all the passwords, I said. Lock him out of every system. And notify our major clients that there might be contact from former employees making false claims about the business. You got it. But Daniel? Yeah? This is getting ugly. Like restraining order ugly. I know. You want me to increase security at the sites? Do it. I don't trust Trevor's judgment right now. That evening, Vanessa showed up at our house. Alone. She looked exhausted, makeup smudged, eyes red from crying. Laura let her in. We sat in the living room, the same room where we'd sat hundreds of times before for family dinners and holiday gatherings and birthday celebrations. Now, it felt like enemy territory. Daddy, Vanessa said, this has to stop. It'll stop when Trevor stops sabotaging the business. He's desperate. He's lost everything. He lost nothing. He still owns 30%. He just doesn't get to run things anymore. He lost his career, his reputation. Madison's family won't even talk to them. Those are consequences of his choices. Your choices, she corrected. You're the one who went to the media. Madison went to the media first with false accusations. I just corrected the record. By destroying her publicly. By telling the truth publicly. Vanessa leaned forward. Dad, please, I'm begging you. Find a way to make peace with Trevor. Find a compromise. This is tearing our family apart. The family was already apart, Vanessa. We're just acknowledging it now. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time we had a real conversation? Not small talk, not surface pleasantries. A real conversation where you asked me how I was doing and actually listened to the answer? She faltered. We've been busy. You've been busy planning to cut me out, to sell what I built, to have me declared incompetent if I fought back. Don't sit here and pretend this is sudden. This has been building for 2 years. I didn't know about the mental incompetence plan, but you knew about the merger. You knew they were planning to buy me out cheap, and you went along with it because it served your interests too. Kyle said it was a smart business move. Kyle's an idiot who wanted to collect consulting fees from liquidating assets. He doesn't care about this business. He cares about his commission. Vanessa stood abruptly. Fine. You want to paint us all as villains? Go ahead. But don't pretend you're innocent in this. You're the one who chose revenge over family. They chose betrayal over family. I'm just responding. By destroying them? By protecting what I built. She walked to the door, stopped. Trevor's talking about suicide. The room went cold. What? Laura stood up. He's been drinking, a lot. And yesterday he told Madison he doesn't see the point anymore, that you've taken everything that mattered. I felt something twist in my chest. Vanessa, if he's genuinely suicidal, he is. And it's your fault. That's not fair. Isn't it? You destroyed his career. You destroyed his reputation. You destroyed his relationship with you. What exactly did you think would happen? I thought he'd face consequences and learn from them. Well, he's facing consequences. And what he's learning is that his father cares more about revenge than his son's life. She left, slamming the door. I stood there, shaking. Laura touched my arm. Daniel, I need to call him. Are you sure that's wise? If he's genuinely suicidal, I can't ignore that. I pulled out my phone, dialed Trevor's number. It rang 5 times, went to voicemail. I tried again. Voicemail. 3rd time, he answered. What? His voice was slurred. Drunk. Trevor, Vanessa said you're talking about hurting yourself. So? So I need you to promise me you're not going to do anything stupid. Why? So you can take more things away from me? So you can destroy me some more? Trevor, I know you're angry. Angry? You took everything. Everything I worked for. Everything I built. Everything I was. You still have... I have nothing. Everyone in the industry knows what happened. Nobody will hire me. Madison's family thinks I'm a failure, and my own father thinks I'm a thief. You violated partnership agreements because I was trying to grow the business, by selling it out from under me, because you were holding it back. He was yelling now, words slurring together. You were stuck in the past, making safe decisions, refusing to take risks. I was trying to build something bigger. You were trying to cash out. I was trying to succeed, to prove I was more than just your son, to build something that was mine. It was never going to be just yours. That's not how partnership works. Then what was I supposed to do? Wait until you died? Wait until I was 50 and too old to matter? I wanted to do something now while I still could. So you lied to me. You cut me out. You planned to destroy my reputation. That was your solution? Silence. Then, yeah, that was my solution. And you know what? I'd do it again. Because at least I tried. At least I fought for something I wanted. Even if it meant destroying your relationship with me. You destroyed that relationship when you decided I wasn't good enough to run your precious business. I never said you weren't good enough. You didn't have to. Every time you questioned my decisions, every time you asked for explanations, every time you looked at me like I was disappointing you, that said it all. Trevor, I questioned your decisions because some of them were risky and poorly thought out. That doesn't mean I thought you weren't good enough. It means I was trying to teach you. I didn't need teaching. I needed trust. And you never gave me that. The line went quiet. Trevor, I said, are you still there? I'm here. Promise me you're not going to hurt yourself. Why should I promise you anything? Because despite everything that's happened, you're still my son. More silence. Then, I'm not giving you that satisfaction. Trevor, but I am done with you. Done with the family. Done with all of it. You want your business back? You've got it. You want me out of your life? Consider it done. I never wanted you out of my life. Yeah, you did. You just didn't have the balls to say it directly. So you found a legal way to do it. Congratulations. Mission accomplished. He hung up. I stood there with the phone in my hand, feeling like I'd just lost something I could never get back. Laura wrapped her arms around me. It's not your fault. Isn't it? No. He made his choices. He's dealing with the consequences. That's not on you. But if he does hurt himself, he won't. That was manipulation, Daniel. He was trying to make you feel guilty enough to back down. You don't know that. I know our son. He's dramatic and impulsive, and right now he's drunk and angry. But he's not suicidal. He's just looking for leverage. I wanted to believe her. But I couldn't shake the image of Trevor alone in his house, drunk, defeated, staring at a bottle of pills. I called Vanessa back. Is someone with him? Madison's there. Is she sober? I think so. Call her. Make sure someone's watching him tonight. If he's really in crisis, I'll pay for whatever help he needs. But he can't be alone. You care now? I've always cared, Vanessa. That's not the issue. She hung up without answering. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed thinking about all the ways this could have gone differently. All the moments where I could have chosen conversation over confrontation. All the times I could have extended grace instead of justice. But would any of it have mattered? Would Trevor have listened if I'd been softer? Would they have respected me if I'd shown weakness? Or would they have just taken more? I sat up, heart pounding. Another text. You destroyed him. Live with that. I called the number. It rang once and went to a generic voicemail. Laura woke up. What's wrong? I showed her the texts. That's Madison, she said immediately. Trying to scare you. What if something happens? Nothing's going to happen. She's playing games, trying to manipulate you into backing down. How can you be sure? Because if Trevor was actually in danger, she'd be calling 911, not texting you anonymous threats. I wanted to believe her, but the texts kept coming, all from different numbers, all variations on the same theme. Trevor's in crisis. This is your fault. You're a monster. By morning, I'd received 17 messages. I forwarded them all to Joe Patterson with a note. Madison's harassment campaign. What are my options? His response. Document everything. If it continues, we file for a restraining order. I called the police again, filed another report. Rick met me inside. Boss, we need to talk about security. This is escalating. I know. Trevor showed up at the Maple Street site last night, drunk, started yelling at the night crew about how he built that project and they were stealing from him. Security had to escort him off the property. Did they call the police? He left before it got that far. But Daniel, this is getting dangerous. He's unstable. What do you want me to do? I want you to consider that maybe this isn't worth it. Maybe giving Trevor some operational authority back would calm things down. And reward his behavior? I'm thinking about employee safety, about liability, about what happens if Trevor shows up with more than just spray paint. I looked at Rick. Good man, loyal employee, genuinely concerned, and he had a point. Increase security at all sites, I said. If Trevor shows up anywhere, call the police immediately. Don't engage, don't argue, just call. And if he hurts someone, then we deal with that. But I'm not backing down because of threats and vandalism. Rick nodded, but I saw the worry in his eyes. This was spinning out of control, and I was starting to wonder if I'd miscalculated badly.